Airport employees of Reddit, what is the strangest, funniest, scariest thing that happened at your airport? I work at my local airport. I live on a tiny island and this airport is smaller than our library. And just last summer we had a hurricane looming down on us. Everyone is getting packed up to evacuate. We're renting cars like crazy to people fleeing and we're trying to get them out of the storm area. I was out checking on the cars we had and when I walked back up there was a man sitting on a bench out front with an apocalyptic looking storm bearing down on us. Wind whipping everywhere. Just soulfully playing the trombone. No idea where he came from or what he was doing but it was surreal. Like something out of a David Lynch film. Edit. To clarify, this island is tiny, but it is also very close off the coast and has a bridge to the mainland. I was cabin crew doing a turnaround from Dubai, UAE to Muscat, Oman and back again. We're on ground in Muscat and hear from ground staff to take extra care of a passenger who is about to board. She was an English lady in her 50s, as you can imagine, well turned out but unassuming all the same, but she looked completely shaken when she boarded. So what happened was, she had checked in her luggage and had gone on to security. She placed her trolley bag on the conveyor belt and she went ahead through the metal detector and was waiting on the other side for her bag. Next thing she knows she is being detained, placed in handcuffs and taken to a room for questioning. They take in her bag and start questioning her. Airport police officer, so did you pack this bag yourself? Lady, sighs. Airport police, so you know what's in the bag? Lady, sighs and goes about describing what's in the bag. The questioning goes on for a while and is quite aggressive. The police officer then opens up the bag and right on top of everything is this parcel filled with marijuana. She's aghast and protests her innocence. Doesn't know anything about it. This poor lady is completely distraught. The gravity of it is hitting her and she's inconsolable. Drugs trafficking anywhere is a big no-no. But in Middle Eastern countries it can end up giving you the death penalty. The officers reviewed the footage of when her bag was scanned. And when she placed her bag on the belt and turned away, a man standing right behind her in seconds undid the zips and slipped it in. She had no idea who this man was. So she was let go and free to continue traveling but her trolley bag was confiscated as evidence. She wasn't too worried about the bag at that stage. I got her a very big brandy. Lesson to be learned is to not let your bags out of your sight, even for a second. I was at the airport one day, waiting for my girlfriend to come pick me after my flight. She was about 20 minutes away so I sat down by a window ledge to read it, obviously. And like normal there were various airport employees, security people, passengers, etc. wandering around. After about 5 minutes, I notice a couple cops with a dog eyeing me up. They go to walk by, and all of a sudden the dog gets really close to me and then sit down. The cops give me an intense look, and reach under the ledge where I was sitting. All of a sudden, they pull out a bag with a few grams of weed in it. This is not my weed, and I start freaking out internally, like any normal person. One of the cops goes, "What's this all about?" Then, the other cop bursts out laughing and explains that they are doing canine training and I happened to sit down right over the exact spot they had previously hidden the bag of weed for the dog to find. The cops were laughing so hard they had to take a couple-minute break from their training. And after my blood pressure kinda returned to normal I thought it was pretty funny too. Edit. I should have mentioned I had at least 300 feet of window ledge to choose where to sit, and I happened to pick that exact spot. Airports employ falconers. The birds are used to keep other birds away from aircraft, because a bird in an engine can really mess up someone's day. So this falconer had come into the airport with his bird to grab a cup of coffee. He decided to try to impress some ladies by taking the hawk's hood off and doing a little demonstration. What he failed to notice was the starlings resting outside on a steel beam. Hawk flew after starlings, smoked the glass and broke its neck. Thousands of dollars worth of highly trained bird, gone. My mom worked for British Airways for years, dealing with special freight cases for import-export. Much of this freight was offloaded and put in a holding warehouse for customers to collect. It wasn't your typical suitcases and luggage of traveling passengers. One shipment came in from Africa, a large wooden crate that didn't actually weigh very much. Her client came in, opened the crate to check the contents and immediately became hugely irate to the warehouse staff. He barges into her office holding a frozen, venomous snake. She said it looked like a jagged lightning bolt, all zigs and zags. He's screaming at her in the office, gesturing wildly with this dead snake, demanding compensation and the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Turns out he didn't declare them as animals, probably to get around any customs laws. There were dozens, if not hundreds of various venomous snakes in the crate. The cargo area of most planes isn't heated, so the poor snakes had frozen, literally, to death in transit. He couldn't sue and had to answer some interesting questions from the Treasury Department once all was said and done. The sucky thing is he was importing them to make anti-venom. If he only declared them and paid for them to be shipped correctly, he would have made a health profit and probably saved some lives. Edit. Thanks everyone for the comments. We've learned anti-venom is another word for antivenin. That modern planes have heated cargo areas. And that Samuel L. Jackson was sorely missed in a warehouse 30 odd years ago. Going to take a moment to say that you should make sure you check with your carrier if you're flying with pets, or even venomous snakes, and make sure you do it safely. As one of the commenters posted, please don't ship your wife in a box on vacation. I worked at a corporate aircraft maintenance place, and we had a situation where this crazy woman somehow got out on the secured ramp area. By the time one of our line service guys saw her, she had the main entry door open up on a Global XRS aircraft. When he pulled up, she looked at him and asked if he could help her get her bags on board. When he told her he couldn't, she told him she was going to fly the plane to China and didn't want to be late. After that occurrence, the security at our airport became insane. Pittsburgh International, 3 AM or so several years ago. Watched an older woman tumble down the up escalator. Every time she flipped over she yelled, "I'm okay," like Philbert from Rocko's Modern Life. Flop, "I'm okay." Flop, "I'm okay." Flop, "I'm okay." Rolled in place for maybe a minute before someone shut the thing off. I used to work for RedditJar and intercepted a human trafficking situation. There was a guy and a lady and a little boy, but the lady wasn't allowed to speak. The little boy looked scared but didn't say anything. He wouldn't even look at me, so it freaked me out. I told my supervisor and she called the airport PD. As soon as he saw me go talk to my supervisor, he looked sort of agitated. He sent the lady and the little boy down the terminal and he was trying to grab all of their things to go meet them. The police showed up and asked me for a description. Since the airport wasn't big, he found them and brought them back to the checkpoint. As they got closer to the checkpoint, he tried to send the lady to the exit instead of having her come back to the checkpoint. Eventually, the police was able to separate the man from the lady and the little boy. She told them everything. They walked the man out in cuffs. I didn't get to see what happened to her because my shift was ending. But when I grabbed my stuff from the back, we made eye contact and she nodded at me. I took that as a thank you. It was a scary situation, but I'd do it again any day. There's no telling what would have happened to that lady and little boy if I didn't follow my instincts. Edit. Firstly, thank you for the gold, kind stranger. Second, I did not expect this to blow up like this. This happened at Rick about 6 years ago. I kind of hope the lady that was involved sees this and knows I think about her often. I used to do cargo for Delta and British Airways. We ship a lot of dead people, a lot of animals, too. They actually sent me to LA to go to a class entirely on animal handling. Here's regulations and procedures for everything all the way up to elephants and whales and it. Weirdest thing we ever got to actually ship was an alligator of some sort. My time to shine. Most of the airport work is mundane, but you will get the odd passenger that leaves an impression on you. There was a group of people coming through for a business trip and their boss had never flown before. One of his employees came in and explained they told him he needed dental records for RedditJar and wanted us to play along. So the boss comes in and hands me his ID and an x-ray from his dentist to check in for his flight. Trying not to laugh, I show it to my co-worker who points at it and says, "Well, RedditJar might have an issue with that." Dude's face went white as a sheet until his employees busted up laughing. He got super red in the face and eventually started laughing at himself. Never let it be said that airports are humorless places. Not me, but a guy I once met. He works at the counter for a big local airline. There was a lady about mid to late 50s about to board with 4 big suitcases. This was a time when you normally could bring up to 2 suitcases or 23 kilograms. He notices this and tells the lady she would have to pay for the extra 2 suitcases. The lady nonchalantly says, "Oh, my husband is carrying those." He asks about her husband and again, completely relaxed and in a natural voice she points at the plane and answers that's him in the coffin. After that he apologizes and let the lady board. Edit. A little bit of clarification. Edit 2. 2.7k upvotes? Damn. Wasn't funny in any way. But this guy had to bring the ugliest dog I have ever seen to the airport and send it to his ex-wife so that she could put it down. She hated him and the dog, but she had a better lawyer. Guy was a big burly dude fighting back tears the whole time and asked if he could take him out to play with him in the grass one more time. Worked at Perth Airport until recently. Most flights in Perth go to Bali and you see some right characters. Read. Bali Bogans. A Jetstar flight was delayed by 7 hours and a woman and her husband used the time to get absolutely it-faced. The woman fancied a cigarette and rather than go outside and go through security again, lit up in the middle of the duty free. My colleagues quickly tried to stop her, but she told them to duck off. Cue airport police. $10,000 fine and no flight to Bali. Should have listened to the staff. Not me, but my father was regional manager of one of the rental car companies at the airport, and on 9/11 when all flights were grounded everyone needed rental cars and it was havoc. My father said the phone rang and he almost didn't answer because he was so busy. Turns out it was the company CEO and ordered him to hand out keys free. No cost. No documentation, as the situation was severe and all other major rental companies followed suit. Not necessarily strange, funny or scary, but it is one of the few stories he told me about the job as a kid that I always remember. I was a ramp agent for a while. For those unfamiliar with the term, it means I loaded and unloaded bags. Some of the more interesting things I saw were at baggage processing. A list of things I saw in baggage processing. A human head transport. It was a big, nitrogen-cooled container. It was declared as a human head tissue, human eyeballs, human genitals, human skin, for skin grafts I suppose, deceased person, lab research rats, a big medical college is one town over, horse semen, Midwestern airport. So I saw it a lot. Bull semen, human semen, snakes, doggers in cages. I always tried to calm them down. Please don't fly with your dogs if you can avoid it. It's a terrifying experience for them. Not me, but a friend. He used to work refueling planes. Most days during lunch he would sit in the airport and do some people watching. Anyway, a cart with a bunch of baggage rolls by and the bag on the end falls off without anyone noticing. But him. After some time security is notified of the unknown bag. Taking all precautions, security bring in the bomb sniffing dog to check it out. The dog sniffs it for a second and then all of a sudden begins to hump the bag. This was all before 9/11. I was not an airport employee, but was shadowing employees as part of a pilot training program. One of our rotations was to spend a few days with the fire department. Not much action, fortunately, but the fire station was in the middle of the airfield, so the view was epic. The Virginia Air National Guard operated F-16s from the airport at the time. They would go out 3 jets a time, and would land 1, 2, 3 in quick succession. I was in the fire station when 3 F-16s were on short final to land. The tower asked a bizjet to hold short of their arrival runway. The bizjet either didn't hear or misunderstood and rolled out onto the runway. The tower told the F-16s to go around. The lead jet banked a hard left, followed by the number 2 jet, but number 3 kept coming. Get down. Landing light on. The tower called to the number 3 jet to go around. ANG radios are encrypted, so we could only hear the tower talking, not the F-16. The number 3 jet was still coming. The bizjet had nowhere to go and the firefighters started getting antsy. The number 3 F-16 flew directly over the top of the bizjet, simultaneously pulled up his gear and hit the afterburner, barreled half the length of the runway, then pulled up hard left to join his buddies. The F-16 probably cleared the bizjet by 100 feet, but it seemed a lot closer to us in the fire station, and I'm sure even closer to the not bizjet pilot. The firefighters found it hilarious. TLDR. F-16 pilot sets bizjet pilot's underpants to code brown using afterburner. Not an employee but a passenger. I got flagged for a random tsar pat down and the agent asked me if I had any metal in my body. To which I said, I have an IUD. The agent freaks out and starts flagging other agents over. She musters all her calm and says please repeat that you have an IUD on you, to which I had to say no. An IUD. A copper intrauterine device. For birth control. She didn't know what an IUD was. I bet you'll remember now. Not an employee. Dad ran a business in Missouri and hired a mechanic who ended up being horrible. Left his tools everywhere. Trucks he worked on would break down. Everything was covered in oily fingerprints. etc. Employee was fired and forgotten. Fast forward a few years. My parents are on their honeymoon in Cancun getting on the plane to come back home. When the pilot announces over the PA system that the plane can't take off for a while because of maintenance, my dad looks out the window at the wing and sees oily fingerprints and tools all over the wing and the ground. His old mechanic walks out from under the wing and begins working under a panel on the wing. Dad gets super worried and wants off the plane immediately. Edit for all the questions. No, he didn't get off, since they'd paid for the flight. I don't think mom was going to let them leave in a million years. They made it safely home, or I wouldn't be here to tell you all the story. My parents worked in airports and told me this story that happened sometime in the late 70s. They notice a patch of purple on the marble floor near the check-in queue. Thinking someone has spilt their red wine on the floor, a cleaner comes over and clears it up. About half an hour later, there's another pool of purple. A different cleaner comes along, clears it up. Eventually the original cleaner comes back, notices the same pool he cleared up already is back. He doesn't know what's going on. He looks up. There's an air vent, dripping something. Maybe it's air conditioning coolant or something. He reports it to his supervisor. Nothing happens for a day or two. They just keep mopping up this coolant. Eventually they send an aircon tech into the roof. He comes back down the ladder, white as a sheet. It's a body. Turns out someone had tried to break past security by climbing through the air ducts. This is pre-Die Hard, remember? So quite clever. Wasn't so clever was taking a wrong turn in the dark and falling 30 feet into a fan mechanism drop. Smoosh. I used to work on the ramp for UPS and we had a couple incidents in my time. One of our small aircraft was on approach and had an issue with his hydraulics. The pilot turned off his automatic systems to fix the issue manually, with no warning to tell him otherwise. He landed the plane without landing gear. Told this story before, but we used to ship crates of bees in our system. A box broke loose mid-flight in a Beech 99. The pilot had to declare a state of emergency, take the plane as high as it could go to subdue the bees, and then land as quickly as he possibly could. We had an employee mangle his hand trying to attach to tow bar to the front wheel. Blood was ducking everywhere and that it was never the same. But the scariest might not be what happens at an airport, but who works at the airport ramp at 2 AM. During my 3.5 years there I worked with 3 separate attempted murderers. One guy got into an argument at a local college and shot someone in a classroom. Another beat his girlfriend's 3-year-old daughter to death. He's currently on Arizona death row. And most heart-wrenching for me, one of my friends, a dude who I was super cool with and I thought of as super nice, was involved in a robbery that went south. His partner ended up stabbing the woman they were trying to get money from. Then the two of them went on the run and his partner murdered him before killing himself. It was a dark time. Obligatory not an airport employee. This happened in Manila, which had the notorious distinction of having the worst airport in the world for several years in a row. While we were waiting for our baggage, the conveyor belt stalled. Instead of calling a technician to fix the belt, the idiots running the belt tried to jumpstart it, and instead sent a section of the rubber parts of the conveyor flying. Luckily no one was hurt. It did cause a big scene though and took about an hour for the conveyor to start working again. Now you're asking, couldn't they just reassign you to another baggage claim? Nope. Remember, this is the Manila airport we're talking about. We don't go the extra mile for our travelers. No sir. But that wasn't the best part of the whole experience. After waiting for what seemed like an eternity, People were already getting their bags and whatnot. A particular box comes out of the magic butthole of the conveyor and an excited passenger reaches for it. Happy as he is that the box, clearly labeled fragile, survived intact. He goes and grabs it from the conveyor. Said contents of the box, which looked like fine china, promptly come crashing onto the conveyor and surrounding floor, which causes another delay in the baggage while the airport employees clean up the mess. The man, clearly exasperated, just can't help but laugh at how his day was going. Good for him. Edit. I remember another incident. While checking into our flight, a certain airport employee was offering people to skip the lines in exchange for some money. Some Korean lady actually took him on that offer. I would have tried to warn her, but she just bolted right with the guy. Not an airport employee, but my daddy's. I'm sure he's got many stories, but my favorite is one I also experienced. We're in the Tseul line as a family, on our way to visit family across the country. The line is its regular slow self, but we're nearing the point where we have to take off our shoes and belts and whatnot. Suddenly, there's a commotion in front of us, where people pick us their bags after scanning. A woman has packed the following things into her carry-on and is refusing to hit R when they tell her she can't take them on. A full-size Costco double pack of peanut butter, a toaster, the kind that flings your toast in the air, a blender with blade. I'm sure there were other things too, but I have never forgotten those 3 things being slowly pulled out of her bag. Not scary, but I worked at a little bookstore in Orlando International, MCO, about a decade ago. We sold only books and book-related items, placekeepers, reading glasses, book lights, etc. because there was an actual newsstand a little ways across the terminal that we didn't bother competing with. One day a very tall, angular and frankly intimidating bald man came rushing up to the counter and straight up yelled into my bewildered face, "Where the hell are your newspapers?" I stuttered out my canned apology and pointed across the way to the other shop. He growled and hauled us in that direction without a word. Another customer who'd heard a shout approached me exclaiming, "Don't you know who that was?" I did not. It was a fellow called James Carville, a well-known political commentator and media personality. I once had a coffee with a fully costumed and very convincing Abraham Lincoln at the Starbucks next to our shop. I also had a pleasant, if somewhat morbid in light of her profession, run-in with Dr. Capital G. Jan Garavaglia. The worst near miss though. My best friend worked in the same store and was working a shift while I had my day off. I came back the next day to an amazing gift from her. James Earl Jones had graced our little shop and signed a few of the Star Wars pop-up books we had in stock. My best friend hadn't recognized him at all, and wasn't even familiar with his career, until our manager approached him. She was shocked that he'd voiced Vader and gushed to me about getting to meet Simba's dad. Sigh. I work the cargo ramp. We're at the very edge of the main runway, and there's a marshy area about 200 feet from the end of the runway. One day we saw a pickup roll out on the service road near the marsh. Hear several shotgun blasts. A couple minutes later, the airport guys in the truck roll up and ask if anyone wants some free geese. One of our crew took 2 dead geese home and smoked them for us. Delicious. Apparently, the geese were just coming right back to that spot if they were forcibly relocated, so they had to be permanently removed. Worked at a tiny little airport with puddle hopper planes. Plane landed on a really ducking windy day in the winter, so there was still some ice on the ground. I went out to flag the plane in and watched incredulously as the wind blew the entire plane sideways toward the ditch next to the taxiway. The pilot had to do some serious engine revving to keep the plane from going into the ditch. Kind of funny and a little scary. Luckily no one was passengers were on board. Edit. Because you're anal retentive. Edit 2. Quick clarification that they landed fine because the wind was parallel with the runway. However, the taxiway they were attempting to go down was perpendicular to the wind. 60-70 mph winds plus some residual ice on the taxiway equals no bueno. Tail of the plane was taking the brunt of the wind and trying to drag the rest of the plane in the ditch. Kind of looked like someone had an invisible rope attached to the tail and was trying to drag it into the ditch with a tractor or something. It was crazy. A school friend's father worked on passport control at Gatwick in the mid-80s. In those days passports were often handwritten and had spaces for things like distinguishing features. One day a young woman presented her passport to him, and he opened it and compared the photo, and then paused before saying, "So this is a bit unusual." He showed her the open passport, which read in part, "So distinguishing features, big tits." She exclaimed, "Simi bloody brother, I'll kill him."